Eagles Entertainment.
Eagle Eye in the Sky is fueled by Gatorade, the official sports drink of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Anything that moves, I don't care who it is. Let's go. Give me everything you got. Play fast, play hard. Let's beat these boys tonight in their house. It's party time. It's party time. There we go. Touchdown!
You're listening to the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast. Now here's your host, Fran Duffy.
That's right on the week, and we've got a lot to discuss as the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast, fueled by Gatorade, continues. I'm Fran Duffy, and as always, I think we've got a great show for you here on episode number 292. At the top of this week's show, we've got Chalk Talk, where I chat with Greg Cosell about the Eagles and the Packers. Sunday afternoon, Eagles lose. What did we take away from the All-22? What did we see from the first two draft picks for this Eagles team in Jalen Hurts and Jalen Reagor? We will discuss that and more, as well as look ahead to next weekend's matchup against the New Orleans Saints. Right at the top of the show here in Chalk Talk. Before we get to our chat with Greg, though, just two quick things. Number one, if you have not lately, please jump on Apple Podcasts, leave us a rating, leave us a comment. It is the best way to throw us your support as we get into the final part of this NFL season. If you ask a question, I'll definitely answer it here on the show. Number two, for those of you who are into the NFL draft, please go check out the Journey to the Draft podcast as well. We're over there talking NFL draft every single week. Myself, Ben Fennell, Dane Brugler, Ross Tucker, twice a week. And especially, we got actually a special episode here early this week, the one that's going to drop early Tuesday morning. Myself, Dane, Ben, and then we're going to welcome in Mike Renner from Pro Football Focus. We do an NFL mock draft, all 32 teams. So we'll see who they had the Eagles selecting. We actually had Mike from PFF make the pick for the Eagles at 6th overall. We'll have to see who he had the Eagles select. So go check that out on the Journey to the Draft podcast, driven by AAA. All right, that being said, let's now dive into our chat with Greg Cosell in Chalk Talk.
Let's get down to business. It's time for Chalk Talk.
Well, back for another edition of Chalk Talk here on the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast, fueled by Gatorade. My friend Greg Cosell. Greg, we've got a lot to get into here this week because obviously, look, it was another loss for the Eagles on the road to the Green Bay Packers, but a change of quarterback for the Eagles in the second half with Carson Wentz going to the sideline, Jalen Hurts coming into the starting lineup. We don't know who the starting quarterback is going to be moving forward into this week against New Orleans, but what we can do is we can talk about what the tape showed us from this past game against Green Bay, and I guess that's where we'll start, right? We'll talk about the quarterback position.
That's all we can do.
That's all we can do is talk about what the tape showed us. And Greg, what did the tape show you watching these two guys on Sunday against Green Bay?
I think we started to speak about it last week, and I think, if you start with Carson, and I think the tape shows you right now that he's not really seeing things particularly clearly. And I think that's been evident the last 2 weeks, and I think it continued this week. And we're not going to sit here and do breakdowns of plays because people can't necessarily see it. But I think there were numerous examples of that. I think really on 3rd and 10 on the first possession, you saw that for the first time. It was the first possession. It was 3rd and 10. So I think that's one thing that the tape showed. I think the second thing that the tape showed is I think Carson is still anticipating and expecting pressure, which, hey, we're not in his head, Fran, so I don't want to say what's in his head, but to me, that's what the tape shows, because I think there were numerous times, and I've studied quarterbacks for years, as you know, there were numerous times where he really never planted his back foot and he would move, and there wasn't pressure by NFL standards. So those two things, I think, stood out just in terms of what the tape showed me.
When it comes to the pressure aspect of it, because I feel like that's a term and a buzzword that a lot of people from the outside will hear and say like, oh man, like that's it, like it's over. Like you immediately it's the reflection on David Carr in Houston and things of that nature.
Right.
Gabbard in Jacksonville. You've seen quarterbacks kind of go through this in the past and
yes.
come out the other side of it. So that's not necessarily the point, but it goes to just show where Carson is at right now as we currently sit here. And one of the reasons why the coaching staff felt it was time to be able to make that change in this game against Green Bay.
Well, again, the last thing I want to do is try to sit here and tell you what's in Carson Wentz's head. I would never, ever do that. Just having done this for years and years, I think I have a relatively decent feel for when I watch a quarterback. And one of the things that in the NFL, and I've talked with coaches about this numerous times over the years, The NFL is different than college football. In college football, we often see quarterbacks have very clean pockets. Everything is comfortable. In the NFL, the definition of a clean pocket, Fran, and you know this, is different than it is, let's say, in college football. In the NFL, you have to be able to deliver the ball when there's people around you. As I said, that's a relative term, but I have, and it's somewhat objective. Different people might have different views of what pressure is. But to me, and I've learned this from a lot of people over the years, a lot of really good people, I think. And in the NFL, you need to be able to stand and deliver when there's people around you. I'm not talking about where you get a shot and you're driven into the turf the second you throw it. I'm just talking about where there's not necessarily a lot of room and a lot of space.
Yep.
And, I think what happens to quarterbacks when they struggle, and I think it's fair to say Carson Wentz is struggling, is number one, you anticipate that pressure is coming. And number two, you perceive pressure that's not really there. So I think those two things are happening based purely on film study.
And I think that that's an issue that, really we haven't seen pop up on the film. And correct me if I'm wrong, we haven't seen it pop up that often with Carson.
No.
Over the last couple of weeks, right? Over the last 2 or 3 games is when I've really kind of started to see it a little bit more often. And look, when you talk about just the culmination of all the pressure that he has faced, again, we're not in his head. We can't speak to what's happening on those individual snaps, but you kind of see all right, the pressure has kind of taken its toll, it seems, from that respect.
Yep. And, the shame of it is it's just really difficult to play quarterback efficiently in the NFL when that's the case. And I think we're seeing that with Carson. It's hard to play the position that way because in this league, there will be bodies around you and you have to be able to deliver the football.
Yep.
And I think what starts to happen when that occurs is your ability to sort of process. The term I use, as you know, is eliminate and isolate. And if people are hearing this for the first time, what I mean by that is eliminate what's not there and then isolate what is there within the timing of the play and the play design and the play concept. I think when you anticipate and perceive pressure, you lose the ability to do that effectively.
Yeah, it's, I think when you look at, that aspect of his game, that has certainly shown up. I want to ask you about a couple of individual plays. One in particular, let's start with the long completion to Dallas Goedert, because I feel like that's been talked about a lot in the media.
Talking about the one that started the third quarter?
Yeah, the one from the backed up situation, the plus 41 yarder.
Yeah.
So, when he's backed up, it was play action. He boots to his right. He throws back across his body on the post route. What were your thoughts just on that play, that throw, and what did you see from the film?
Loved the play. Absolutely loved it. It was the first play of the third quarter. I love the whole concept. 13 personnel, so you get the Packers in their base defense, which they never play. They play 2 snaps the whole game. They don't want to be in their base defense. It was a well-designed throwback concept. And the other part that I loved, high tower jet action from the boundary to the field to make it look like a 3-man route concept to the field. And that's what the play looked like to the defense. And we don't see a lot of jet motion from the Eagles. So when I saw that, I happened to miss it live. Who knows what I was doing at home at that very moment, but I happened to miss it live. So when I put the tape on today and saw it, I was like, wow, jet motion. I love it. And like I said, it made it look like a 3-man route concept to the field. I thought Goddard did an outstanding job showing the corner route, then breaking to the post.
And the safety ended up on the ground.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And then Wentz, I think he underthrew it, but I think he saw Goddard so wide open. He just wanted to make sure that he got it to him for the completion, because you had an opportunity for a big explosive play, and it turned out to be 41 yards.
Yeah, on that one, he's going full boot to his right, and Goddard is going from right to left, opposite
Correct.
hash. So that is a difficult throw when you're.
I'm not knocking Carson on that. When you
no
make
question.
Sure that's complete.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to make sure that we kind of clarified that for the listeners.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of times you'll see when teams do run that concept. I feel like because I just watched it, Aaron Rodgers had just thrown that touchdown to Robert Tonyan, was it the week ago, on a very similar route, very, very similar concept.
Yeah.
And typically you see that it'll be like half boot, where like it'll be off like outside zone action, and the quarterback is not too far out of the pocket. It's not too far of a throw across the body. Here they went full boot. And so his momentum.
No, he was throwing that on the run.
Yes, exactly.
He did not. I mean, we've seen the Eagles do things like that where he has stopped and set.
Yep.
Different route concept, But didn't he hit, I think it was against the Giants where he hit Perkins. Was it last year or the year before?
It was last year.
Last year where he booted right, but he was able to stop and set and throw it across his body. Like I said, different route concept, but still throwing it, a throwback kind of deal.
Yep, no question. And so we kind of saw that from that play. One key sequence that I think is important to kind of bring up was late first quarter. The Eagles get the ball. They're right in the fringe area of the field. 2nd and 8, they take a sack. 3rd and 14, take a sack. I don't know if you remember the sequence, if you've got your notes from it, but it was late first quarter, just that 2-play sequence where
Are you talking about where the Kiki sack on 3rd and 11?
I believe so. It was either 3rd and 11.
See, that to me was an example. That was a perfect example of what I said earlier. And I made a note of Kiki sack on 3rd and 11 late in the first quarter, so you're probably speaking about that. I thought that was another example of Wentz breaking down before he planted. I thought he moved into pressure on that play.
Gotcha.
And that to me was one of those plays where he anticipated and expected pressure because he never planted. There was no pressure initially, and he moved into the pressure. So I thought that was an example of what we spoke about to start the podcast.
Gotcha. All right, so let's get into what we saw from Jalen Hurts when he stepped onto the field. Obviously, his ability to run around and make plays. He was able to run for a couple of different first downs. Interested to kind of get your thoughts, kind of walking away from the tape, having watched Hurts.
Yeah, and I think quarterbacks who come in who have running ability always show that, and it's exciting. Obviously, on his first drop back, he threw the 34-yard fade to Rager. Which was a really nice job because I thought Sanders missed his blitz pickup assignment and Green got in clean. But Hurts had time because that's a timing spot throw. And since it's 5-step drop timing, a second-level defender will not get there when you're in the gun. So it didn't impact the throw. I tell you what impressed me a lot on that play was Rager because I thought he used his right arm really effectively coming off the ball to create separation and get on top of King.
Yeah, I thought that you saw him really win off the ball fast. You saw him win through contact at the point and then to the ground. So a couple different points of contact there. I really like Rager's ability to go up and win in that situation. Anything else? Any other big takeaways from Hurts overall in this game? Obviously, the touchdown throw to Greg Ward, a lot of people were excited about. Any other kind of takeaways from what you saw from the rookie? Yeah,
it's funny you mentioned that. Look, I think when you see a guy come in for the first time, you expect not to see certain things. Like I thought he left a throw to wide open Ward on an inbreaker on 2nd and 22 on his first possession. He got stuck on his first read, which was Jeffrey, and then left the pocket with no awareness of Ward. And hey, that's okay. It's his first game. You would expect him to come in and not necessarily be reading, 2 and 3. It's funny you mentioned the Ward 32-yard touchdown because that was another example where, and you know the play, I'm sure they ran dagger to the trip side with Ward from the inside slot running the deep over. Another example where Ward never planted. He left the pocket immediately. Now it ended up being great. I thought it was one of the few plays, by the way, in the game in which Jerry Alexander did not show any field awareness, but that's a separate point. But it ended up being a touchdown, and I'm sure you say when he comes to the sideline, great play. I thought overall in his first significant playing time, he did not have a real good sense of progression reading. But my sense was that he got a little more comfortable as the game progressed and he played more snaps.
Yeah, we've talked about this a lot with quarterbacks that kind of have that running skill set. You watch them earlier in their career, really, you can go down the list of a lot of young guys in the NFL right now that have that skill set. That's kind of what it looks like, right? Early on,
no question.
More often than not, that's how it's going to look.
He had more snaps than not in which he hit his back foot and broke down and left the pocket. Now, if the immediate throw was there, he threw it. Obviously, we talked about the Rager throw. There were a couple of others where he did that. But for the most part, he broke down and left the pocket, and he made some plays, with his legs, which he'll probably do if he continues to play more. And like I said, I do think he got a little more comfortable. Let me ask you a question. The 20-yarder to Zach Ertz.
Yes. So I'm glad you asked about this. Go ahead.
What did you think the coverage was? I watched that play 10, 12 times, and I just wasn't sure.
Yeah, I went back and forth on it. They were running some kind of zone pressure from the field side or from the boundary side, if I remember right. They were on the left hash, I believe. And Green Bay drops za'darius Smith to that side, and I'm not sure if he was supposed to get with and get under that, or if the defender on that side over number 2 was just carrying vertically, and that's why he was removed from that area of the field. Either way, Ertz ended up being wide open.
Yeah,
I wasn't sure exactly who to blame on that side, but Ertz was wide open on that.
Because Ertz was number 3 to trips, and the Packers clearly matched up man to man on number 2 and number 1, and nobody played Zach Ertz.
Yep. That's why I was interested to kind of go back and watch, because even seeing it on TV, we didn't see a clean angle of why Ertz was so wide open, and it was a play. It ended up being a play. The Eagles had run that concept or a similar kind of concept numerous times in the game, where they ran basically it was from a trips formation, 3-by-1 set, and number 1 and number 2 both ran vertically, basically clearing out. So using 2 receivers to clear out the sideline, and then ran the tight end, the number 3 receiver, on basically a corner route, sail route, deep out route, whatever you want to call it.
They had no success with it until that play.
And it just happened. They caught Green Bay in that coverage. It was a busted coverage, and Zach Ertz was wide open, and Ertz was able to hit him. I'm glad you asked me about that play.
And obviously the Packers, once they saw Hurts to come in the game and run a bit, they started spying on him. I think they had 4 or 5 snaps where they spied. It was mostly Kirksey. There was one where it was Preston Smith, but, they started spying on him.
Yeah, and that would be something that if Jalen Hurts is the starter this week, I would imagine that New Orleans will be doing something similar. But that remains to be seen. We'll get to see later on here. You mentioned Jalen Reagor, and I thought that was important to kind of bring up. I'm sure you didn't watch the special teams film.
Well, I saw
that one live.
Yeah,
Great to see him get into the end zone on special teams. That was a big part of his game in college. But what did you see from Jalen Reagor? I mean, we talked about the play on the fade. We saw him on an end around. Just good to see him get more and more in, as a part of the game plan. Again, just a couple weeks removed from that injury.
No, and I think you're trying to do that. I mean, that's why that play where he caught the fade ball from Hurts was a play I was excited about, because obviously a lot of college receivers come into the league, and there's always a concern about press man because they're going to face much better corners at the NFL level, Fran, as we both know.
Yep.
And you're going to get better press coverage, whether it's physical jam press coverage or just mirror match press coverage is just going to be better, and you're going to have to win. And I thought that being physical, because even though he's not tall, he's a stockily built, strong kid. And I thought the way he used his inside arm pretty much to kind of, competitively push King, who's a 6'2", 6'3" corner, push him away and just therefore win through contact and create. Because all you need, because he can run, he just needed a step, and he got that step with that physical approach to the press man.
Yeah, it's to me, just one of the big highlights for Jalen Reagor for sure so far this season. Hopefully we can see a few more here as the regular season comes to a wrap here in the next 4 games. I'm trying to think if there was anything else. Did anybody else stand out offensively in your mind? We saw a little bit of Miles Sanders in this game, a couple nice runs from him, I thought, especially early, where he was able to kind of make that first man miss. I mean, the first run of the game, play side backer, completely unblocked. I don't know if that was a missed assignment on Jordan Mailata or somebody on that left side, but play side linebacker comes in clean, free run through, and Miles able to shake off him and make that first man miss for 6 yards. Certainly good to see. I'm trying to think overall if there was anybody else on the offensive side that really stood out. We talked about the Goddard play. Mailata I thought was solid overall against that pass rush group. I don't know if you had any other big takeaways from the offensive side.
Probably not big takeaways. I mean, everybody always talks about they got to run the ball, and that's great. And it's nice to be able to run the ball. But you and I both know at some point you got to throw it. So we'll see what happens going forward. They're facing, we'll get to this obviously, where they're facing a team that's really difficult to run against this week.
Yeah, no question. We'll talk about that Saints defense here in a bit. Let's get to the Eagles defense real quick. I want to play this game with you because I've had fun doing it over the last couple of weeks. Who was like 1 or 2 guys that walking away from the defensive film, you would say, oh, this guy really stood out to me in this game?
God, I now I feel like I'm having a test because I don't know if I feel like one guy really stood out this week to me where, normally I say, hey, someone really stood out. I don't know.
I thought Fletcher was really, really good against the run in this game. And, obviously Green Bay looking to run the football. I thought he was impactful.
Yeah, I could see that.
After that, to me, like Singleton kind of flew around. I think he'd like to have that 77-yard touchdown run by Aaron Jones back.
He'd also like to have the Tanyan touchdown back because that was his responsibility.
Yeah, take us through what you saw from that one because that one I know has been talked about.
Yeah, I mean, they were let's see. So that was the 25-yarder to Tanyan, right? The 25-yard touchdown?
Correct.
Yeah. What happened on that play is if I'm not mistaken, they were in a cover 3 boundary lock. And it was a 3-by-1 set, and Tanyan was number 3 to trips. And so when you're playing boundary lock and you have an offset back to the boundary and a boundary X, that means that the hook player, and that's the term in zone, the hook player to the boundary side is responsible to carry number 3 running vertically across the field from the field to the boundary. And Singleton kind of, I can't tell you what's in his head, so I'm not going to try. But that he was responsible for Tanyan, who was number 3 to trips on, I'll call it a deep over route. And he kind of got lost. And you could even see when the play ended, I think it was Mills who kind of looked at him like, hey, I think that was yours, because it was his. So, but you're right. He did fly around. He made some plays. That one, I think he just mentally got lost for a sec.
Yep, I think that certainly makes sense to me. It was interesting, kind of looking big picture at this game for the defense, because I mean, you have, on one hand, you forced Green Bay into 4 3-and-outs. That's not easy to do against that offense, because they've been operating at a very high level for much of the season. On the other hand, you give up the 77-yard touchdown. They gave up 2 touchdown drives of 90+. I mean, it was either, really, honestly, when you get down to it, it was either touchdown drives that were long touchdown drives, or there were 3-and-outs. It was really one extreme or the other with this defense. So watching the film, saw plenty of good. You saw some not so good.
And obviously in this game, they chose to play big nickel as their defense versus 12 personnel, some 21 personnel, because the Packers actually played with a fullback on a number of snaps. And they played Wallace as the third safety with McLeod and Mills. Yep. And what struck me as interesting about that, Fran, was that Wallace was the post safety.
Yes.
And that struck me as interesting because I did not see his skill set coming out of Clemson as that of a post safety.
He didn't do it often.
What's that?
He didn't do it often when he was there.
No. But, I mean, they obviously felt that McLeod, who's been very, very good against the run this year, was the better guy to play in the box versus 12 personnel.
Yeah, I think that was really interesting to see from the big nickel standpoint. I was interested to see what the rotation would be with Will Parks no longer on the team. And then it seemed that in dime that they went 3 corners, 3 safeties, and that the third safety was Marcus Epps. Was that kind of how you saw that rotation? Kayvon Wallace came off.
That's
in dime.
Exactly what it was.
Came on. Yeah,
they played 3 corner, 3 safety dime. Yep. And, which we've seen them do this year.
Yes.
Obviously Epps, due to COVID, missed a number of weeks, but I mean, he had been the dime safety prior to that, so that was not something new.
No question. All right, well, let's get to this week's matchup here, Greg, because Eagles got a big test once again. This New Orleans team is very good. I want to start with we usually start with the opposing team's offense, but since we've talked about the Eagles' offense and some of their troubles, I want to start with New Orleans' defense, because watching this group, I spent all day Friday watching it, and it's a really fun group to study. They fly around. They do a lot of stuff. I mean, they do a lot of different things from a coverage standpoint. They really mix things up. It's a very aggressive group. They play fast. They're very multiple up front, too. When they go base, you'll see odd fronts and even fronts. They'll line up Zach Bond in a couple different spots. Cam Jordan will stand up and play with his hand in the dirt. David Onyamata slides up and down the line. They rotate guys in and out. Linebackers, there's a nice rotation there. In the secondary, they play a lot of guys. So, I mean, this defense they're number one in a lot of categories for a good reason. It's a good group.
They're a really good group. They're number 2 in the league in rush defense, giving up 76 yards per game. The last 4 or 5 weeks, even if you take out the Denver game where Denver didn't have a quarterback, they've been playing really, really good football. A lot of people think it's, with the addition of Quan Alexander, maybe that's it. Who knows? But the point is, when they got Quan Alexander, he replaced Alex Anzalone as the nickel linebacker. Yep. So they clearly felt that Quan Alexander was a better fit for them in their sub-nickel with Demario Davis, who to me is one of the 3 best 3-down linebackers in the NFL.
I'll tell you what, I was really impressed with him.
Oh, well, I've been watching him for a number of years. Last year, I came out after about week 7 or 8 and said that I thought he was the best 3-down linebacker in the NFL last year. Wow. And I think he's continuing to play at a really high level. He does everything that you want in a 3-down linebacker. And so it's that, we'll see. They normally do not play base. 90% of their defensive snaps this year have been in a sub package. Gardner Johnson is, to me, you can make the argument that he's one of the best 3 or 4 nickel, slot defenders in this league. And I think he's the reason for what they do because he has safety and corner traits.
Yeah.
And I think they feel really comfortable with him in the run game. He can blitz, he can cover. So therefore, they play 90% out of a sub defense.
Yeah, I know they're one of the highest teams in the league when it comes to playing dime. I believe fourth in the league and with playing six defensive backs. They feel comfortable. I mean, when you look at the guys on the back end there, when you talk about Chauncey Gardner Johnson, who can line up in the slot, they'll play him out wide, they'll line up in the box, he'll blitz off the edge. Obviously, Malcolm Jenkins, he's playing a little bit more deep than he did when he was here in Philadelphia. But at the end of the day, a lot of his snaps up near close to the line of scrimmage.
Well,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, just to show you how committed they are to play dime, and then I'll respond to what you just said.
Yeah.
They started Patrick Robinson this week, who was in for Janoris Jenkins, who was inactive. And then Robinson gets hurt. It doesn't impact their ability to play dime at all. They just bring P.J. Williams, who normally was the third safety in dime. And because he was a corner in college and has NFL experience at corner, they just moved him to corner opposite Lattimore. And they just brought in DJ Swearinger, who's got a ton of experience in this league. So they are clearly committed to dime. Now, keep one thing in mind. This is a team that plays a ton of two-man coverage.
Yep.
Okay, that means two deep safeties, man-to-man across the board. And what they do there is the safeties are Swearinger and Marcus Williams, and Malcolm Jenkins will match up to the tight end man-to-man.
Yep. What I'll often see on third downs, and tell me if I'm wrong, third downs, it seems like they crowd the line of scrimmage, linebackers up on their linebackers are a big part of their pressure package. So whether it's Demario Davis, Quan Alexander, Alex Anzalone, whoever's in there, those guys are going to be up crowding the line of scrimmage, and they'll play 5 across with those guys with dime personnel, 6 DBs spread out across the formation. You don't know who's coming, who's blitzing, who's dropping. They do a lot from that standpoint. And it's not like, it's almost, correct me if I'm wrong, to me it felt like a lot of designer kind of blitzes where I wasn't like, oh yeah, they're a big double A gap team, or they're big with bringing both guys off the edge, or lots of cross dogs. Like they'll run a lot of different 2 and 3 man games. They'll use the linebackers and safeties as part of those stunts, and that's also difficult to be able to deal with on a week to week basis. They do a lot of different things from that standpoint.
Without question, Dennis Allen, who I've talked to about this, is a big believer in that. And the other thing they do a lot of, Fran, is what we call a green dog. Yep. So in other words, if you feel that you can't handle Cam Jordan off the edge, or Hendrickson, who's got 10.5 sacks this year. So if you feel you can't handle them off the edge and you have to keep a back or a tight end to pass protect to help, then what they do is the player who's guarding the back or the tight end man-to-man, he doesn't just stand there and cover grass. He attacks the quarterback. They play with an aggressive mindset. And normally when that happens, there's no one who's responsible for that guy. So, they get sacks that way as well. So no, they are an aggressive defense. What was interesting this past week, because they play so much 2-man, and with 2-man, you can do what we call undercut routes or tailgate routes. They did not match Lattimore and Julio Jones this week, because if you're going to play 2-man, you don't necessarily need to do that.
Yep. Do you envision that that'll be something the Eagles will see on Sunday?
Without question.
Yeah, I think so too. I think you'll see a lot of 2-man.
And I also think you're going to see a lot of pressure.
Right. Yep. That's a good point. I think when you look at
with Mulata and Driscoll, you're going to see pressure.
Yeah. It's a really good group. I mean, Cam Jordan's a lot of fun to watch. His hands are about as fast as anybody in the league. I'd put him probably with the Bosa's there in terms of how fast his hands are. He is a power rusher through and through. He will go. And
he never gets talked about with the high-level pass rushers, just because he doesn't get 18 sacks a year.
He's so.
But you could argue that his career, that he's been a special player.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, Trey Hendrickson has been very productive. The guy they can bring off the bench, Marcus Davenport, is as freaky as they come to him. The guy's just dripping with traits. They spent 2 first-round picks on the guy, and he comes off the bench. And yeah, I know he's not like a finished product yet, but with his explosiveness and his power, I mean, when he's a looper on stunts, running up against guards and even against running backs at times, like that guy's a load to be able to stop. It's a good group.
They got one more guy who's worth mentioning because I think when he came in the league, no one saw him as a pass rusher, but he's become a little twitchy at times, and that's Onyamata. He's a very good inside pass rusher.
One of the most underrated players in the league.
Yeah,
I would say for a few years now, watching the Saints defense, he'd been kind of like that backup, the first man off the bench, and when this guy gets hurt, we'll plug him in here, or we'll plug him in there. Kind of similar to Tank Lawrence, or not Tank Lawrence. Who's the other Lawrence down in Dallas? Not DeMarcus. Who's the DND tackle that's been there for forever?
I forget, but I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, for some reason I'm having a blank here. But David Onyamata, really, really impressive kid.
Really a good player.
He's
really a good player.
All right, let's go over to their offensive side. And obviously, look, we, much like the Eagles, we don't know if Drew Brees is going to make the start here this week. That being said, it seems like he'll be holding off for one more week coming off his rib injury, and that Taysom Hill will once again get the start, his fourth so far. Interested to kind of get your thoughts on Taysom Hill. Has he exceeded the expectations for you coming in from what you expected?
A little bit. I mean, I didn't really know, so I don't want to say he's exceeded because I don't know if you did. I did not watch him coming out of college.
I did not study him.
Really, again, he had a reputation. People talked about him as a runner. I don't think many people took him seriously, Fran, as an NFL quarterback. So therefore, I didn't study him because I can only get to so many guys. I probably do 15 quarterbacks a year, give or take, and I didn't get to him that year. Right. So I really had no sense other than from, what people I respect told me that he's not likely to be an NFL quarterback. So I really hadn't seen him. And, the first start came week 11 against the Falcons. Sean Payton did an unbelievably good job of really, I don't want to say keeping it simple because that comes across as if the guy can't think, but you know what I'm talking about. And I hope people do as well, defining reads, defining throws so that you can play with a sense of rhythm, not asking him to do full field reads, keeping everything to one side of the field, things like that, which you do with any young quarterback, any inexperienced quarterback.
Greg, it feels like the term quarterback friendly used to be thrown around a lot before.
Yeah.
It was almost like a bad term, like, they're a real QB friendly offense. People don't say that word, that term anymore, because I feel like that's the way that teams play now in the NFL. Like you want your scheme to be friendly to the quarterback. There is nothing wrong with that.
No, that's what it should be.
That's
you know what that's called, Fran? Coaching.
Yeah, right. Yep.
That's called coaching. It's just like our buddy Ben, always talks about that you want a system quarterback and you want a game manager. Those are not pejorative negative terms.
Right, exactly.
That's what you ideally want. Last week, they asked him to do a little bit more. I thought he threw the ball really well this week. I thought that he looked comfortable. I think there were some throws he was just a hair late, and I think obviously, I think when Drew is healthy, he's going to play. But I think it leads you to believe with Taysom Hill that he could play the position. I'm always leery of deciding what a guy is. I mean, so many people do that now on social media because, we have to make a definitive judgment on every throw and every snap. But as we both know, but I'm just, I don't want to sit here and say, well, you can't play like this every week. Well, it won't be like this every week if he keeps getting starts and starts and starts. Maybe it's not this year. Maybe it's next year. Who knows? But I thought they did more with him this week. They ran some of their concepts that they run with Drew, and I thought he executed well.
Yeah, I haven't. I mean, obviously, look, they're going to do when he's in the game. You're going to see more design quarterback runs. They've done some good stuff with him inside the 20-yard line, quarterback sweeps, quarterback powers. Like you're going to see those designed runs. But they open up the pass game a little bit more this week as well. So that's certainly going to be a big part of how they're going to try and attack this Eagles team. It's not going to just be QB run, QB run, QB run. I would ask you about another player in that backfield who is just so dynamic when he's got the ball in his hands. And I feel like his role has changed just a little bit with Taysom Hill under center as opposed to Drew Brees, and that's Alvin Kamara. I feel like with Kamara or with Taysom Hill in the lineup, he's not featured as much as a pass catcher. Probably they don't want to create as many of those touch situations for Taysom Hill underneath. But overall, I mean, when the ball gets into Alvin Kamara's hands, I mean, he's a tough guy to get to the ground.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe the Taysom Hill runs would have been Kamara.
Exactly.
Who knows? But the point is, the guy is so dynamic, and you can't go into the game saying, "Oh, we don't have to worry about him as a pass receiver."
No,
because he may be the best receiving back in the NFL.
Right.
And normally he is offset in the backfield to the boundary, the short side of the field. Oftentimes he's split to the boundary with Michael Thomas, and that's a really tough cover with those two guys to the same side of the formation. They clearly don't overuse him as a runner. It's game dependent because some weeks we might see Latavius Murray get 15 carries. Some weeks like this past week, Kamara gets about 15 and Murray gets 5. So you don't know how Sean Payton sees a specific opponent in terms of backfield usage.
No, I think it's certainly going to be something to watch here in this one. Obviously, when they're just trying to bang downhill, more often than not, it's going to be Latavius Murray. But then you get Alvin Kamara on, those perimeter runs for sure.
Yep.
But then also, the outside zone, they'll get him in counters just because that can be, a C-gap run where he's able to bounce and kind of take that out into space. You're going to see plenty of Alvin Kamara. And then also the screen game as well. We've seen they'll do the different throwback plays to him. They'll get him out of the backfield on those Texas routes. So he's going to be a factor in this one. Interested to kind of get your thoughts. Obviously, the usage has not been there because he's been out of the lineup for different reasons. But thoughts on Michael Thomas since his return to the lineup over the last couple of weeks?
Well, he's had two big games, both against the Falcons.
Yep.
Week 11 and week 13. He's better than I thought he would be coming out of Ohio State.
Agreed.
I think, to me, he's a really good route runner. He's a lot quicker as a route runner with his ability to separate and win than I thought he'd be coming out of college. He's super competitive, has really good hands. They use him a lot on crossing routes, but he's really good run after catch. So he can catch slants, he catches hitches, and he creates yards after catch. He's one of those guys, you've got to make sure you get to the ground when he catches the football.
No question. And obviously one of the more competitive and more physically imposing receivers in the league, just because his size, the way that he battles through the route, early in the down, through the route, and then at the catch point, he is a tough guy to be able to handle. Jared Cook still working down the seam, has that ability to be a field stretcher, at that position. They've got a couple of other young guys that they kind of rotate in at the receiver spot. You've got the veteran field stretcher and Emmanuel Sanders. So plenty of targets there for whoever's at quarterback in this offense. The other part of this is their offensive line. And I know they were kind of banged up over the last couple of weeks, but when this group is healthy and everybody's in the lineup, you look at left tackle, Teron Armstead, left guard, Andrus Peat. You got the two young guys at center, and right guard. When you look at Eric McCoy and then Cesar Ruiz at right guard, the first round pick this past year, Ryan Ramczyk at right tackle. What's that? 1, 2, is it all 5 first round pick? No, 4 first round picks and a second round pick. That's a hell of an offensive line, Greg.
It is. And the other thing to keep in mind, and this will be interesting to see how the Eagles match up, is they play with 6 offensive linemen on 15% of their snaps.
Yep.
So will the Eagles, they see that as 4-3 or big nickel? We won't know that until the game. But, they do play with 6 offensive linemen, and they're very, very good at it. I think I did that research today. Fran, I'm just going to pull that up because they've had 120 snaps with 6 offensive linemen, okay? They've had 98 rushes, okay, for averaging 4.6 yards a rush when they rush with 6 O-linemen. And the quarterbacks are 14 for 22 for 197 yards. So they are very successful. 14 runs of 10-plus yards when they've had 6 offensive linemen on the field.
Yeah, that speaks for itself in terms of their efficiency, both running the ball and throwing the football out of that set. I'll be interested to see ultimately how the defense responds here this week from the Eagles. But Greg, it's going to be a really interesting matchup. Excited to talk about it with you next week right here on the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast. Thanks so much once again for joining us here on Chalk Talk.
Fran, always fun. Thanks.
Experience the fastest internet and more in a snap. With Xfinity XFi, you get the speed, coverage, control, and security you need for the ultimate in-home Wi-Fi experience. Xfinity, proud partner of the Philadelphia Eagles. Well, great stuff this week, as always, from Greg, who you can follow on Twitter, just like I do, at Greg Cosell. And while you're at it, I'm at Eagles XOs. That's where I post all the podcasts I'm a part of and all of our X's and O's content that we produce here with Eagles Entertainment. I greatly appreciate everybody that promotes this podcast on all forms of social media. That is one way to support the show, but the best way is to go into Apple Podcasts or Stitcher, leave us a rating, and leave us a comment. I wanted to give a shout-out today to someone who did just that, and that is Coach48, who left us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast with the question, basically asking, look, could Aaron Rodgers play for the Eagles this year? He referenced the Tampa Bay game where he lost an offensive tackle and then did not have a very productive outing after that, saying, is there any chance that Aaron Rodgers would still be alive after the beating that Carson Wentz takes week after week? So, look, obviously, we've talked about this. There are a lot of extenuating circumstances when you look at the inefficiency on offense this year, right? When you look at the Carson Wentz, there's plenty of blame to go around. At the end of the day, they are not moving the football. They're just not, whether it's running the ball, throwing the football. There have been lots of things. You have all the turnover along the offensive line. There is no question that is a huge, huge factor, right? And you talk about the changing coaching staffs and moving guys around, and the offense. You have a lot of young players, especially at the wide receiver position. You had both tight ends out of the lineup. It's just been a constant rotating door, right? I mean, and that's very tough for a quarterback, for a center at Jason Kelce. Those guys trying to keep everything in line with that lack of continuity. It's very, very difficult. But, look, at the end of the day, it's a results business, and they have not been able to consistently move the football. As of this recording, we don't know who's going to be the quarterback for the Eagles this week against New Orleans. We don't know if it'll be Carson Wentz or if they'll go over to the rookie and Jalen Hurts. We'll have to continue to sit and wait and find out. Maybe we'll know by the time we take the air for myself and Ben Fennell later on this week here on the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast. Thanks so much to Coach 48. Great question. Hope you got the answer that you were looking for. Special thanks as well to Greg Cosell and all of you out there for your continued support of this show and all the rest of our podcast offerings on Eagles Entertainment. All that being said, I think that'll do it. Another show in the books here on the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast, fueled by Gatorade, for everybody here at the Duffy House. I'm Fran Duffy. We'll talk to you later this week.
There's still time to be in the stands at Lincoln Financial Field this season with an Eagles fan cutout. Put on your game day best and upload a photo of yourself so that you can join us on game days. Fan cutouts printed by Rico are only $35, and orders of 4 or more receive a $5 discount per cutout. Best of all, your purchase benefits Eagles Autism Foundation and also waives the registration fee for the 2021 Eagles Autism Challenge event. Order today at PhiladelphiaEagles.com/cutouts.